Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Agelocer Tourbillon. This watch is available from agelocershop.com for €817. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this watch box. The interior is finished to a good standard, fully upholstered with a velour fabric. Very nice presentation. I like the contrasting white stitching around the perimeter, so it's a good quality watch box. With the watch, one also gets this tag, as you can see. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Agelocer Tourbillon. We have a 40mm case diameter. We have a 46.9mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 10.9mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The alligator style leather strap tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the deployant clasp. Flawless mirror polishing to the stainless steel deployant clasp. Now, this is the first time I've seen this design of deployant. The deployant clasp was invented by Cartier, and since then it's been copied by a plethora of brands. But this design of deployant is different to the usual style because, as you can see, both ends of the leather strap fold back upon themselves, rather than using the conventional tang method going through a hole in the end of the strap to adjust the length. And this actually works very well because one can get the symmetry of the deployant perfect on wrist, because usually with a deployant sometimes it will sit offset on the wrist because one has to shorten one side of it rather than both sides, but with this one can fold back both halves of the strap, both the left and the right hand portion, to get the clasp perfectly centered on the wrist. I actually like it, and it works very well because the strap doesn't pull out of the deployant. It actually works very well. The only difference is that there aren't any two buttons. Usually on a deployant clasp there will be two buttons to deploy it, but this one simply uses the fingernail underneath it to pop it open, and I really like it. Flawless mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks. Nice attention to detail because it's also engraved with Agelocer's brand logo. It snaps shut with a nice positive click, and so there's no danger of it accidentally deploying. So very good quality clasp, and I think they deserve credit for using a different style. So as you can see, there's slots in the clasp, and that allows you to fold through the leather strap and get the length perfect. With regards to the leather strap, it's a padded alligator style leather strap. Now, it is very thick at the spring bar end, and I think it's going to need some breaking in to become soft and supple. But however, at the deployant end, it's very soft and supple and very flexible. So I'm confident with daily wear, this leather strap is going to become very comfortable to wear for long periods of time. Flawless stitching to the top side and underside, and beautiful alligator grained finish to it. So it's a very aesthetically pleasing strap, and they've made the correct decision by using a matte finish to the leather rather than a glossy finish as per a dress piece. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver applied indices and the silver syringe hands. These silver syringe hands are very well finished. The proportions are correct. Often with Chinese watches, the proportions of hands are undersized, they're too short. But if you look at the tip of the syringe hand, the minute hand, it extends all the way to the 60-minute ticks in the applied indices around the rehort. So they've done a good job because they've got the length of the hands correct. The hour hand is also very well proportioned. The mirror polishing to the facets of the syringe hands is also done to a very high standard. These are very well finished hands, and I really like them. They're very aesthetically pleasing. They also make a refreshing change from using Dauphine or baton hands. I think the syringe hands with the tips are very good looking. So the bridges to the movement are fully skeletonized, as you can see, and at the 6 o'clock position it houses the double-sided hollow flying tourbillon. So very aesthetically pleasing design to the movement, and I like the fact the bridges are fully skeletonized. The double dome sapphire crystal is very well executed. I like the nice bevel which projects above the mirror polished bezel, and it's just beautiful the way the edge of the sapphire crystal catches the light, and the clarity is very good. One can clearly see the flying tourbillon rotating. So I'll show you the case back. It's a screw down case back which provides an effective hermetic seal to 50 meters, and as you can see it's an exhibition case back. I like the large portion of the crystal. It does a good job of displaying the tourbillon movement, as you can see, and it's very well finished. They've done a good job of engraving the gears and also finishing the bridges to the movement with bevels. fully skeletonized so one can see all the way through it, as you can see. Absolutely gorgeous finishing to it, and again, they deserve credit because this is an incredibly low profile exhibition case back, and of course it is only 50 meters of water resistance, and therefore they were able to make the crystal in the case back very thin, but it's incredibly smooth and flat, so it sits very close to the wrist and therefore gives a very comfortable fit. The stainless steel portion to the screw down case back is engraved to a high standard, flawless mirror polishing, and the milled slots have no sharp edges or burrs, so it's a very smooth, low profile exhibition case back, one of the thinnest exhibition case backs I've ever seen on a watch. The underside to the head of the piece is very well finished, flawless mirror polishing to the underside of the lugs. Good attention to detail because they've also used stainless steel quick release spring bars rather than using conventional spring bars. I'm often critical in my reviews of brands using padded straps, but they use conventional spring bars, and that means it's difficult to get a spring bar tool in between the edge of the strap and also the interior of the lugs. But with a quick release spring bar, that negates the need to use a spring bar tool. One can easily remove the strap to change it, and it works very well, so they deserve credit for making the correct decision on that. So with regards to the crown, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, nailed finish to it. Mirror polished domed cap, as you can see, and also embossed to a high standard with the Agelocer brand emblem, so very nicely finished. So it's a push-pull crown which provides 50 meters of hermetic seal, so in the closed position one can manually wind the movements, which is the caliber A9001. So manually winding it, one can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 80-hour power reserve. Absolute pleasure to manually wind it. It feels very smooth, and one can feel the tension building up. Really positive winding to it. I like the feeling of it. It doesn't feel gritty, it feels silky smooth, and it's got a nice firm resistance to the mainspring. One can gradually feel the tension building. So I really like it. And a push-pull crown rather than a screw-down crown is perfectly acceptable on a tourbillon piece because it's a daily wear piece. So pulling it out to the first click position is the final click position. We're now in the time setting position, and it feels silky smooth. It's got a nice light resistance to the caliber A9001. No backplay clockwise and anti-clockwise. One can feel the resistance of the gearing, but it feels very smooth. So the quality of the machining to the gearing is very good. Feels very smooth. Absolute pleasure to set the time. Now the negative is the caliber A9001 doesn't have hacking. Now if you look at the tourbillon at 6 o'clock, you can see it continues to run at 60 seconds per rotation. So one cannot hack the movement. There's no second hand to set the time precisely to the second, and one can't use the tourbillon itself to set the time precisely to the second. It doesn't hack. It continues to run continuously, even in the time setting position, as you can see. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that will restart the movement. So I'll give you a wrist shot, and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, unusually, I'm pleased to report that this does actually fit my 8-inch wrist perfectly. Now, I've extended both halves of the leather strap through the deployant to their absolute maximum, so 8 inches is the maximum wrist size this will support. But however, if you have a 6 to 7.5 inch wrist, you'll have no concerns whatsoever, and of course you can indeed actually fit up to an 8-inch wrist. So I'm very pleased with that because often straps are just a fraction too short. This one does suffice. Proportions of this piece are outstanding. 40mm head of the piece is very well balanced by the 20mm lug width. Nice slight taper from 20mm down to 18 at the deployant. So the proportions of the alligator style leather strap are very good. Lug width is correct. 46.9 is slightly shorter than I would like. 48 is perfection. 46.9 is just under that. But if you have a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you'll find the 46.9 lug to lug fits you very well. The curved profile to the lugs wrap around the wrist very well, so it's a very well proportioned case. The thing I most like about it is it's only 10.9mm thick, and that's very impressive, and Agelocer deserve full credit for this because usually tourbillon movements are very thick and therefore they need a thick case, and it's nothing unusual for a tourbillon to be 12 or 13mm thick. But this is only 10.9, and they've made the correct decision by using a flat exhibition case back, which is very low profile, and needless to say 10.9 will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So at 40mm by 10.9 thick, this is an ideal daily wear piece, and it will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff. So very low profile. It's actually deceptive because I would usually expect it to be 12 or 13 millimeters, being a tourbillon. They've made the correct decision by having a manual wind tourbillon movement rather than an automatic with a rotor, because had they used a movement with a rotor, it would have made it thicker. It would have been 12 or 13, so 10.9 is very impressive. Very low profile for a tourbillon. Absolutely gorgeous to look through the double dome sapphire crystal, and the AR coating does a good job of reducing the glare and the reflective nature of those mirror polished syringe hands, and also the silver mirror polished indices. So good looking piece, feel good factor is good, comfort level is also good. Only 60 grams because it's fully skeletonized, which reduces the weight of the movement, and also wearing it on the leather strap further reduces it. The watch is also available on a bracelet if the leather strap isn't your personal taste, but I think the alligator style leather strap is very aesthetically pleasing, and it complements the skeletonized double-sided hollow flying tourbillon movements. The silver applied indices work very well on the chapter ring because they contrast very well with the chapter ring. It's often a problem with fully skeletonized movements that they don't have any register, there's no applied indices, and it makes reading the time difficult. But the silver mirror polished syringe hands actually contrast very well, and also the silver mirror polished applied indices. They contrast very well with the 60-minute ticks engraved into the chapter ring. So one can actually read the time on this very well, and they deserve credit because they've got this correct. I've seen other tourbillon movements which are fully skeletonized, and they were difficult to read the time, but with this one can clearly register the minute and the hour hand against those silver applied indices, so very good legibility. So there's no loom on the dial and hands, and therefore we don't need to do a loom test. So I'll discuss the movements because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this is powered by a double-sided hollow flying tourbillon, and it's called the caliber A9001. It has 25 joules, it's fully skeletonized, it has hand winding, but it doesn't have hacking as I've demonstrated, so that's something to bear in mind if you prefer movements with hacking to set the time precisely to the second. The most impressive aspect of this caliber A9001 is it has an 80-hour power reserve. Now, the negative of it is it does take a lot of manual winding to fully charge it. Usually with mechanical movements, automatic and manual wind movements, if they have a 40-hour power reserve, they typically need 40 clockwise rotations of the crown to manually wind them to their maximum power reserve to fully wind the mainspring. This has 80 hours power reserve, which is double the typical. So therefore one has to rotate the crown by 80 times versus the usual 40. So it is time consuming to manually wind it, and bear in mind that every 3 to 4 days one needs to manually wind it 80 times in order to reach its maximum 80 hours. But on a positive note, one can manually wind it and then wear it for over 3 days, and then it's still running because it has 80 hours of power reserve. So one only needs to manually wind it every 3 days, but when one does wind it, it is a time consuming process because it's not 40 turns, it needs 80, so it's a lot of manual winding. But it is silky smooth to manually wind, and it's nice to be able to wear a watch for 3 days and not have to manually wind it. The negative is, of course, it's a manual wind movement. It doesn't have a rotor, it's not an automatic, so it won't wind itself. But I think they've made the correct decision because it is very low profile. Absolutely gorgeous finishing to the caliber A9001. Nice bevels to the edge of the skeletonized bridges, and nice anodizing in grey to the skeletonized bridges. The gears are well finished, they're also well engraved, and one can see the jewels, they've got a nice purple tone to them. So it's a good looking piece to look at. I like the movements both through the exhibition case back and also through the double dome sapphire crystal in the front. It's absolutely delightful to look at the tourbillon, as you can see, and it's just a work of art. I really like double-sided hollow flying tourbillons because one can see all the way through the tourbillon. As you can see, it's just beautiful to look at it running. So it's a mesmerising piece to look at, and on the wrist and off the wrist, one can look at the movement through the back, and I think it's just a very good looking movement. 80 hours is very impressive. Now, with regards to accuracy, the negative of high power reserve movements, such as this caliber A9001, is they're not particularly accurate. When they're fully wound to their 80-hour maximum power reserve, they are running at their optimum, and that's the case with all mechanical movements. This is running consistently at plus 6 seconds per day, which is actually within chronometer limits when it's at 80 hours. But however, when it's below 30% of its 80-hour power reserve, the accuracy then does vary, and it runs typically between plus or minus 30 seconds per day, which isn't very impressive. So really, to get consistent accuracy, one needs to keep it wound to its 80-hour power reserve, and every 3 days I would recommend that you manually wind it to its maximum. But having said that, if you do keep it fully wound, it will run at very accurate limits, such as +6. So one gets the benefits of a long power reserve, but the negative is it's not particularly accurate when the power reserve begins to deplete, and certainly below 40 hours, the accuracy begins to become wider. So that's something to bear in mind if you like very accurate movements running within chronometer limits. But I'm very satisfied with +6 when it's fully wound. The 80 hours is good. One can wear it for over 3 days. 3 days is 72 hours, so one's getting 3 days plus another 8 hours. And I think it's just absolutely gorgeous to look at the Tourbillon running. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. €817 is the price point. Now, to evaluate this piece, one really has to study the quality of the finishing to the bezel, the case, and also the case back. I can say that the quality of the finishing to this piece is the kind of finishing one would expect to see on a high-tier piece costing in excess of €5,000. The brush satin finishing to the flanks is done to a flawless standard, beautiful longitudinal lustre to it. One can see the grained finish to the 316L grade stainless steel on the flanks. Nice mirror polished bevels to the edge of the lugs. Flawless mirror polishing to the bezel, and also flawless mirror polishing to the screw down exhibition case back, which is also finished to a very high standard. The deployant is also mirror polished to a flawless finish, no sharp edges, no burrs, very well executed, nice positive click to it, so it works very well. So this piece is absolutely flawless. The quality, the build quality, quality control, finishing and materials are all outstanding throughout. The quality of the finishing to the tourbillon movements is also outstanding. So yes, it is excellent quality, and yes, it is excellent value at €817. I think this is an excellent piece overall, and Agelocer deserve full credit. The thing that's most impressive about this piece is it is only 10.9mm rather than being 12 or 13mm thick, and Agelocer deserve full credit for getting a tourbillon piece down to 10.9. That alone is reason to purchase the piece. So no negatives to it whatsoever. I'm going to highly recommend it to you for your consideration. I hope you've liked my review of the Agelocer Tourbillon. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.